Welcome to Disruptive Successor, a show for next generation leaders in family businesses and entrepreneurs who want to disrupt the status quo and take their existing business to a whole new level. We all know that what got us here isn't going to get us there. This show will provide inspiration, advice, and resources to help you create massive impact. Hi, this is Jonathan Goldhill, and welcome back to another episode of the Disruptive Successor show. And this is a show that features an entrepreneur whose story I'm thinking and hoping is going to be very much like yours. Christy Crook, who is out of Denver, started her company Phoenix Masonry because it literally grew out of the ashes. And those were the ashes of the 2008 recession, which many construction companies were very hard hit. She is in a family business, and she grew up literally in this family business. She was like maybe you were. She was roller skating on the job site when she was a little kid, and then doing running around, probably grabbing supplies, and then became a safety director and then business development person. And then lo and behold, now she runs the company. So Christy has a BA in organizational communication and business management and an international MBA from the University of Denver. And she's worked at multiple masonry construction firms in various roles. And she founded Phoenix Masonry in 2010, like I said, after the recession. She is very active in the community. She sits on the board of the American Subcontractors Association, as well as Transportation and Construction Girl. So she is a leader in the women in construction, which I'm seeing more and more of. Those are our disruptive successors today. So Christy, welcome to my show today.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. It's exciting to be here.
So let's back up and tell the story a little bit, because I did a very butchered job probably at describing what it was like. But you are truly a disruptive successor. You're the typical kid who grew up probably following his dad around, going to job sites with your sister, and seeing the work from the ground up. Is that kind of how it started for you?
Absolutely. That's definitely how it started. My sister and I were very close in age, and we grew up on the job site. We grew up around those big gruff men that a lot of people are afraid of, and they were, those were the people in our lives. And so a job site was something that always felt comfortable to me, that always felt like home to me. And yeah, we spent a lot of time in our childhood going out to job sites. We were in Southern California at that point, and my dad was a flat work concrete construction company. And he would take us out to his job sites on the weekends so he could kind of check progress on things. We'd lace up our roller skates and we'd get to roller skate around job sites on the weekends. It was a lot of fun.
And what was it like? You probably were the only women, or girls, rather, going around the job site, and you're surrounded by a whole lot of men. I mean, you've really been in an industry that is so male dominated. So what's it like to be a minority among all these men in a very male-dominated industry?
Absolutely. It has changed a lot over the years. When I was young, I think we were kind of a novelty. My sister and I, we were the cute little girls that got to come to the company parties and got to go out on job sites. And then that really started evolving for me as I aged. And when I turned 16, I got my license. I immediately started working for my dad. At that point, we had moved to Denver, and he had a company called Masonry. And as soon as I got my license, I would track my miles, and he paid me. At that point, I think it was minimum wage, $7 an hour or $5 an hour, something like that. And I would track my mileage, and I would go around town to all of the different general contractors here in the Denver market to pick up sets of plans. And that right there is a change in the industry. There's no need to drive and pick up sets of plans anymore. You can just download them right away, which helps a lot. Sure. But it was kind of neat because I started getting to know my dad's business associates from a very young age. And so a lot of the current clients I have right now have actually known me since I was 16 years old, and they've seen me come up in the industry as well. After that, I decided to take some of the OSHA certification courses, the train the trainer courses, and that kind of thing, so that I could move into a safety director position for him, which paid a lot better than going and picking up plans.
Right.
So, I kind of did that while I was working on my bachelor's degree concurrently, and just learned a whole lot about safety in the industry, and that's helped me develop a good background with that, so that I can help train my safety director currently now, and how to best make sure our employees are remain safe and get to go home every night to their families. So, and after safety director, I kind of realized when I was going through school that I was more interested in the business development, the marketing, the relationship building part that really comes with construction. And that's something that a lot of people don't really think about when you think of construction, but it is really all about relationships and building those relationships. And I started really doing that in the early 2000s. And then, my whole family worked very, very close with my dad at Metro Masonry. We were all very, very involved. And unfortunately, when the financial crisis hit in 2008, everything just went awry. And when we lost everything, our entire family lost everything. At the time, I was also going through a divorce. So I'm going through a divorce. I lost my house and I filed bankruptcy. My sister lost her house and filed bankruptcy. And my mom and dad lost their home and filed bankruptcy.
Wow.
So all of us were in those proverbial, that flame, those ashes, trying to figure out how we were going to survive and how we were not going to be homeless. And 2 years later, in 2010, after I kind of floated around and worked with some other mason contractors in town, we realized I didn't want to work for somebody else. I wanted to build my own. So my dad came out of his forced retirement to mentor my sister and I when we started Phoenix Masonry. And as you said, up from the ashes. So it was quite a ride.
That's very interesting. And I've got to think that there was something different in your head at some point, because you went back to get your MBA and you were studying international business.
I was.
Were you thinking you were going to get out of that business and go do something else like travel or?
Absolutely, Jonathan. I'm glad that you asked me that, because it's funny, a little story. My original plan was to actually get a dual degree. I was going to do an International MBA and a JD. Wow. And I just couldn't get the scores on the LSAT to be accepted into the law program.
Okay.
Which now I look back on it and I think it was probably a blessing in disguise.
Right.
But I had original plans that I was going to be an international contract law, possibly working for another company. Jet setting, travel is one of my passions. It's funny. I look back on it now and I just couldn't imagine that being my life. I really love this life that I've created. And I think that's key, is that I've taken this really great foundation that my father gave my sister and I throughout our upbringing, and I've really created something. And now I'm trying to take it to that next level, much like you talk about in your book.
No pun intended on the foundation piece.
Yeah, exactly.
But let's talk about maybe we'll reconstruct or deconstruct what happened, or maybe we'll just look forward, because we've been going through a period of economic prosperity. It's been 11 years since you started your company.
Absolutely.
The wind has pretty much been at your back, so to speak, economically. It's been a great ride. We were talking before we started this call about buying residential or even residential real estate, and how things are selling like hotcakes, multiple offers. So the real estate market is really robust. But a construction business, if it's only doing construction work, meaning it doesn't have any recurring revenue, is at the whim of the economy. And so I've seen, $30 million construction businesses drop down to $5 million.
Yeah.
And it's a pretty rough, pretty rough when the wind gets knocked out of your sails, so to speak. So let's either take me either back to 2000, like 8, or what are the lessons, more importantly, that you learned back then that will make it so it won't happen again to you going forward? Like what will be, because, it's going to come at some point when there's going to, real estate goes through cycles. So, how
it
do
is
you?
very much a cyclical market, and construction, anybody who's in this industry really gets that it's one of the most volatile industries that you can be in. And every single day that goes by, I learn something new. My dad still is mentoring me. He's my senior estimator and acts as my CFO. But I own the company 100%. And there have been a lot of lessons learned just, over the last 10 years since I started Phoenix Masonry. And then, lessons that I learned previous to that too. And some of those are the ways you want to do business. And then sometimes maybe the things you don't want to do, I feel really strongly about creating a business that can succeed and do well without me having to be there every single day. And I think that that's something that's kind of unknown in construction, and particularly when you look at my leadership style versus my father's. He's your typical boomer. He's in the office 7 days a week, and he loves it. That's where he wants to be. And with that, he became very, very good at creating companies that couldn't manage without him. He wanted to be involved in all of those minutia, the details that happen on day-to-day basis. And that's a different kind of life than what I'm looking to make for myself. And then, also realizing that with construction being as volatile as it is, one of our family kind of jokes is that he was a millionaire twice. It's really easy to make a lot of money and then lose a lot of money in my industry. And he's done that twice. And so I've learned just priceless approaches and ways of doing business and ways of building relationships to try and avoid that and to mitigate some of the risks of my industry and the cyclical nature of it.
So let's talk a little bit about that, because I do remember probably I was looking over a set of financial statements from someone who was looking for a loan from my company at the time. And this is going back into the early 1990s. And he had a $20 million net loss in his prior year on his tax return. And I was scratching my head, and I had never seen a tax return this thick. And I just didn't know how I was going to get him a loan. And so, so first of all, it seems really important that you have to choose your customers wisely. So if you're a subcontractor, you got to know that, given that the company you're going to be working for is probably going to be holding back retention 10% on all your invoices until the job is completely signed off, you've got to make sure that you're in business with someone that you can trust and that you like. So that's really important, I imagine. What about management of your assets, though? Because if you get too asset heavy, equipment, leases on equipment, trucks, and then you're sitting there holding a bunch of equipment leases, that's not too pretty, right? If things start to turn around.
Absolutely. That's not. Yeah. In fact, I don't mean to interrupt you, but please. That is very specifically the reason that Metro Masonry failed. Was its lease obligations and its real estate and asset management that created a situation where as soon as work fell through the floor, Metro Masonry couldn't pay those anymore. Right. So one of the methods that we've used to kind of protect ourselves from that is really limiting how much we do lease versus what we own. And so if we have something without any obligation on it, it's not necessarily a liquid asset. We'd have to sell it if we needed to, but we own it 100%. So I would say right now, out of our fleet, we've made a goal that no more than 25% of our fleet is leased at any one time. Wow. So that's one of the ways that we've tried to help mitigate that risk. And And now I kind of had a little bit of a PTSD. We haven't purchased any property in Phoenix Masonry's name. And that's something that I would like to consider looking at doing over the next year or so, to look at building an office for ourselves. And we right now we lease our property, and it really has been fantastic. It fell in our lap back when we started the company. My parents had lost their home, and this land showed up in the Denver Business Journal. It wasn't advertised anywhere else. We got 16 acres, a house for my parents to live in, and a warehouse and yard for me to be able to run my business out of.
Wow.
For just an unheard of price. I mean, it's like it was meant to be. When we first started leasing that property, we got it for $2,000 a month.
And do you use much of this 16 acres, or is it like?
We use approximately 3 acres of it or so for yard storage and our equipment storage and that kind of thing.
Okay.
We had to put up a little outbuilding, which we use to store, cement materials and things like that can't be exposed to weather.
Mm-hmm.
So
I mean, so generally, probably a best practice is for you to buy the building outside of the business name and then lease it back to the business, but have it be in like a close transaction. Whereas a family, you own the land and the building, and then the business pays you some money. So that's probably just a structural thing and not my area of expertise. But so balance sheet management is super important, and you've got this 25% rule. I imagine also that keeping track of what kind of cash do we have on our balance sheet, and so we talk in terms of having a core capital target of 2 or 3 months typically of cash on hand to cover our operating expenses. And so as you start to see, maybe bids not coming through as quickly, or, signatures not coming through, or money not coming through as quickly on checks or bids, as you start to see just the opportunity slowing down, as you start to see more people bidding on the jobs, which I'm sure you're seeing a lot of, I think we spoke about. Right.
The competition right now is crazy.
Right. So it's paying attention to those things as leading indicators to when you need to, batten down the hatches, so to speak.
Absolutely. So, and that's definitely something that we've had to deal with, like so many other small business owners during the pandemic, that we've really had to look at and plan for. One of the things about construction that's interesting is that it typically lags a little bit behind. When an economy starts falling, construction lags a little bit behind that because you're still finalizing projects and that kind of thing. Yeah. So we really didn't start noticing the crunch of pandemic effects until about September or October, and and then we started realizing that projects that we would have been up against 3 other Masons a year and a half ago, all of a sudden we're finding like 15 to 20 other Masons are bidding on the same work that we're bidding on. So we've really had to focus this year on reducing our overhead costs and also increasing our value propositions for our general contractor partners, and how we can stand out to them and help them more than our competitors might be able to. And there's several different ways that we've been able to do that. We've really started looking at infrastructure projects, which I'm sure everybody knows that's a big deal right now. Our incoming president is doing a lot with infrastructure, and the city and county of Denver has a pretty great plan to help women and minority-owned companies compete with some other, maybe male-owned companies that I wouldn't have maybe gotten the opportunity to compete against. And I'm able to do that by getting certified. And then the city and county actually has specific goals. And when masonry accounts for typically 10% of the cost of a project, if they can get 10% of that as a goal by using Phoenix Masonry because we are women-owned, that has just done wonders to help us mitigate some of the risks of that extra competition over the course of the last year and what's going to be coming up this year.
Well, you have to be really good at paperwork also if you're going to go that route.
Having
dealt with a lot of government contracts, and used to many years ago help some companies get we call it Meeby Weeby, which was
Yep.
minority women business, but now it's called like just disadvantaged business enterprises get
Yep.
certified, or getting 8A certified, which I guess
Mhm.
is a SBA maybe.
It is. Yeah,
Designation.
that's an SBA.
Lots of paperwork, and so you got to be good at that stuff. So you almost need like a full-time like contracts compliance officer who pushes that paperwork.
More importantly, I would say is a good secretary to help you
Yes.
keep your minutes.
Yes.
That's the most important. And I'm very, very lucky to have the team that I do behind me helping build us up.
That's great. That's great. And so great. So, what we're talking about here is, just to recap a little bit, it's like cash flow can be a huge problem. If you're only looking in the rearview mirror, it can be deadly.
Yes.
Right. And if you're looking if you're looking out the front of the windshield and looking further out, and you're talking to your peers and knowing what's going on in your industry and paying attention to the economics, you can take advantage of opportunities that are coming down the road. Because as this show is being recorded, our incoming president has only been around for a month. And
Exactly.
So for you to see that infrastructure projects, which have predictable, probably cash flow, I would imagine, the guarantee of the government behind it can be very, very positive. So
exactly, it is. It's very enticing, and there are a few things that, like you were saying, make it a little harder to work when you're under a federal contract. But knowing that was coming, and that was kind of based on us understanding that the economy does lag a little bit, has afforded me the opportunity to not only maintain our certifications, but also during the pandemic, having the foresight to go ahead and get our bond line in place and that kind of thing, so that we're prepared for that when those projects come up. Right. Is going to be paramount for us.
And balancing that also, so that it doesn't become such a big piece of your business that it puts you at risk, because 30% or 40% of your business is basically with a single contract or something. Absolutely. Like that. Because that can be very risky. So now let's talk about the other side, which is so I guess we've been talking about the demand side of the business. Yes. Let's talk about the supply side. The challenges in finding people in your industry is very difficult, and it hasn't gotten any easier. And this is not a new problem. This has been going on for a decade, 2 decades.
If not more. With the work that I do with Transportation and Construction Girl, and I won't spend a whole lot of time on there, but our basic, what our mission is, what our goal is to help young women understand the opportunities that are available to them in the transportation and construction field. And in doing that mission, we go out to local schools and talk with guidance counselors and things like that. And one of the things that I learned was that guidance counselors for a very long time, several decades, weren't allowed to speak to students about any other options besides four-year college. And that has created a situation where we no longer have apprenticeship programs. We no longer have shop classes in high schools. And our youth doesn't understand the power of and the earning power included in a career in the trades. So, it's the workforce shortage is real. It is definitely something that we have tried a lot of different things to recruit and retain employees, and those have ranged the gamut. Some of the things that have worked the best for me is vacation time, paid time off, and it's interesting that if you speak to people who are employed by subcontractors or who are subcontractors themselves, that's often not a benefit that's offered. They just don't do that, and so that's kind of helped set us apart. And one of the things that I've learned from my dad is, and I figured that out by going out and talking to my employees and understanding what benefits were important to them and what they needed, and that was just a cornerstone of the way my dad did business. His personal motto was always "People do business with people," and understanding that has been so powerful for me. So we do run through a cyclical, seasonal. Our jobs are very seasonal. So, just about every spring, we have to have a kind of a mad rush towards hiring. So we do employee bonuses, we do hiring bonuses and different things like that. But the reality is that the construction industry is forecasted to need an additional 750,000 field workers by 2030. And that's just not there yet. And so we've got to put our efforts into helping develop our future workforce, our incoming workforce. And that has so much to do with apprenticeships and on-the-job training and that kind of thing.
Well, that's great that you're reinvesting back in the community to do the work that you're doing. It really, you're really putting your money and your mouth in the same place, and I applaud you for that. But that's a long, that's a long haul, right? That's not going to solve the problems for your business today, but it's thinking about the industry at large. What about in your industry? Are you seeing companies take advantage of the visa programs and bringing people from out of the country, or is that not so prevalent?
We don't see that being as prevalent, particularly in my little microcosm of Masonry. You do see a lot of that being used with landscape contractors, who's, where I can work year round, where we might have winterization and we're tenting a project so that we can work on it. Landscape companies don't have that, and so all of their work is coming in about a 6-month period, and that's when you're finding those is it the H-1B visas being used to help with that. But the reality is that my personal beliefs are immigration needs to change, because these folks want to fill jobs. They want to come and work, and it's it is real, and that process, whether it be a visa or an immigration overhaul, could go a long way in helping the workforce shortage.
Absolutely. And for those who are listening and know that I work a lot in the landscape industry, and most of my clients are in the Sun Belt, Southwest states, we have year-round work out here. Yeah. It's February and it's 70 degrees here today in Los Angeles, so not uncommon. But yeah, for the Northeast, for the northern parts of the United States, or probably even Denver, where landscaping is not happening in February because there's snow on the ground.
Exactly.
I see that HB1 visa program being more popularly used. Absolutely. So one of the things that I've found is really important in attracting people is building culture. Yeah. And it is building a company like you talked about, and like your dad told you, is find out what people want. Yeah. And someone once taught me when I first started getting into the coaching business, which is going back to 2004, and someone said that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Mm-hmm. And to me, that was my real beginning of understanding of what leadership is really being able to touch people in their hearts and pull them along, have them, create followership. And I think part of that comes from building a company that people want to work for. That's a great destination to land, whether it's you're coming from another state or another country, or wherever, from another trade, and you want to come to work for this company because you offer things that people are interested in. So let's talk a little bit about what you've done to build culture. And I'm interested, by the way, just as a side point, is health benefits. How much do these people want health benefits, or would they rather have the cash? Or, so talk to us about what you've done to build culture. And just as a sideline, is health benefits that important to your workers?
Yeah, definitely. I'm really glad you asked me about that. I'll kind of answer the idea of culture first, and then we'll come back down to the health benefits. Culture has been one of my number one priorities since day one. And my efforts have always been to make sure that my employees know that I don't view them just as employees, but that we really are an extended family. And so that said, I make sure that I have relationship with my employees and their families. And we do, we weren't able to do it last year, obviously, but we do 2 big gatherings. We do a barbecue in August. Our anniversary is August 10th. So I try and do an anniversary party every year where my employees bring their families. And when I say they bring their families, I mean it. they aren't just bringing their kids and their wife. Mom and dad are coming. Grandma and grandpa are coming.
Wow.
We've got cousins. We get jumpy castles. We actually have purchased 4 bouncing castles so people can bring their kids and they chuck them in there. We bring an ice cream truck in and let the kids run up, and then I just pay the bill at the end and do all kinds of things like that. And so, I get a chance to see not just my employees, but their families at least once a year. And then we do our holiday party, and that's just for the grown-ups. And we do something that's a little higher scale, a little nicer, and we do a lot of raffle and giveaways and things like that. And just, getting up on stage and noticing my employees and thanking them and sharing what each individual has done to help the company move forward that year has just, it really has kind of created a situation where we are all family.
Can let me just comment on this because it's just so important. It's that, this idea that the stakeholder, which is as much the employee as it is anyone else, it's not just the shareholder, because this is a single shareholder corporation, right? You're 100% owner. So it's not Phoenix Masonry, and your employees are not slaves to work for you to just increase your shareholder returns and value. And by the way, not too many decades ago, Milton Friedman, the economist, talked about like the sole purpose of a corporation is to maximize shareholder returns. Mm-hmm. And could you imagine in a closely held or a family business how that would never be the case? Because if you don't consider other people in your as important stakeholders, like the employees, even your customers and your vendors to some degree, and maybe they're welcome at these parties as well. It's like that's such an antiquated idea. It seems so it's so hard to believe, but it's so important is to build that culture and to really recognize that the employees they're not slaves to a business.
Exactly.
This company this is family here in a sense. So
and it's funny too. I I tell anybody who will listen to me that I'm the least important person in the company. My employees, my team, everybody else is more important than I am. They're why we exist and why we found the success that we have. And so I think that one of the traits of leadership that is just so incredibly important is humility and being humble. And
that's level 5 leadership, according to Jim Collins.
Exactly.
It's being absolutely, secondary to the people and not taking credit and taking the blame when things don't go well. So it's
exactly. I've spent a lot of time and energy really focusing on creating an atmosphere of family, and that we all have each other's backs here at Phoenix. So when we did have to look at our overhead and reducing that, one of the first things that had to go for us was a part of our health insurance, our health benefits that we were offering. So to back up a little bit and give you a little history on that, in about 2013, we were facing the same difficulties, having a hard time finding workers, and we had reached a point where we could afford to offer health benefits. And at that point, I thought that paying 100% for my employees and their families was the best way to attract and retain employees. So we had actually been doing that up until my renewal, which is March 1. So as of March 1, we will be paying 100% for our employees, but no longer covering the family or dependent portion of the health insurance. And so I'll have to get back to you on that, Jonathan, because we're in an experimentation phase right now. Yeah. But in meetings that I've had with my foreman and with my employees, the information that I've been given is that they would rather have 2 weeks paid time off every year than have the family portion of their health insurance paid for. So those are just one of those balancing acts that we're doing right now. So I'm also interested to see how that outcome turns out.
Well, I think that's generally the thinking is people seem to want the cash and not so much the health benefit. So, and then they can take the cash and they can, they want the time off. They want the money first. And so a lot of times the Latino workforce has been slower to take up owners on health benefits. So, well, good. Well, we'll see what we'll check in on that.
Yeah, we'll have to check in on that in 6 months or so.
Exactly. So, so what are you seeing? So you're part of the National Association of Women in Construction.
Yeah.
So, so tell us a little bit about what that organization is all about, and is it growing? And what's their mission? And like, why do they exist?
Yeah, so I am a member of the National Association of Women in Construction. They are an association whose aim is to improve women's position in the construction industry nationwide. Our local chapter is still very much in its infancy stages. It's trying to grow, but the real vision is to introduce women to the idea of construction careers, and then B, also improve how women experience the construction industry when they're employed in it. And that's just something that is so important to me, because I'll be honest with you, Jonathan, I don't see as much of a gender inequality in my industry as people think might be there. And, I see women whose ideas, whose designs, whose skills in project management or superintendency, I see those being valued, welcomed. And some of that might be because of the workforce shortage, but there's so many things that women can do in my industry that oftentimes they just don't know about, and what the value of those things can be. It's in working with Transportation and Construction Girl, we bring girls out onto job sites and different things, and they get to see stuff. And I can't tell you how many girls have told me they want to be crane operators now. They just think that's so cool. They want to operate a crane. So the National Association of Women does really the same thing that TCG does, but to women who are already in their careers, who are already in the industry, and helping to promote them. I'm also involved with the American Subcontractors Association Women in Construction, and that's just a really great group where there's a lot of camaraderie. And I think that as a woman in my industry, it's easy to feel intimidated or overwhelmed, and being active with these associations has given me the opportunity to learn from my colleagues and support each other in that. It's highly collaborative, and we lift each other up.
I think that's great. And oftentimes we talk about the glass ceiling, but that's in a corporate environment, in an office building. Yeah. And you guys are not breaking the glass ceiling, you're breaking the brick wall or something.
Yeah, exactly. I'm climbing to the top of the scaffolding.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's awesome. And I'm seeing more women in construction that I'm working with who are next gen leaders in family businesses. And I love the trend. I think it's just fantastic. So, here's a question I just was thinking about, which is that a lot of companies learn that if they're selling a product, that they need to learn to add some services to it because it brings an additional stream of income. But I've never really thought about if they're selling a service, turning it into a product. And I know that you have a passion for wine, and I know that that wine storage buildings probably would be something that would be built out of concrete to keep them cool. So seems like that'd be a great opportunity with the growth of the wine industry in the United States. Gosh, it seems like in California, anyone who's got a big family and a farm is growing grapes.
Yep.
Seems like that could be a great business. is
Absolutely.
doing wine storage buildings.
Absolutely.
And you own and lease.
I started my love affair with wine in Southern California. I grew up in San Diego. And then, kind of graduated up into the Northern California, Napa Valley regions. And, I spent the last several years going and spending time there and falling in love with the industries and realizing that Napa, being able to purchase anything and do wine storage, it was just out of reach for me. That market up there is saturated and there's a lot of money, a lot of money up there. However, I have recently discovered some other wine regions, and one of them that we're currently looking at right now is Fredericksburg, Texas. It's Texas Hill Country, and people don't realize that there's not just wine country down there, but really good wine is coming out of Texas. There's really good wine coming out of there. And yeah, so one of the possibilities that I'm looking at is maybe building a wine storage. And it's pre-infancy stages, but the possibility of purchasing some investment rental property down there, and then in the future building a wine storage facility. I currently have a wine storage that I use for my personal collection. And there's a lot of things that people don't think about when it comes to that. And the beauty of Masonry in creating a building that's meant for that is the protection of your investments. And wine can be a big investment. And it needs to be protected from vibrations. It needs to be protected from temperature fluctuations and light. And Masonry offers all of that. It just really is a perfect marriage between my business passion and then my side passion, that's wine and travel.
Well, Christy, this has been a pleasure talking to you. You're definitely the smartest Mason that I've ever met, and the first female one as well. So very interesting, very illuminating. You have a lot of vision, and I think that your vision is what has been like one of your success factors, I believe. And it gets you out there and seeing that you need to give back and want to give back, and you want to shed light and provide vision for others. So let's come up with an interesting question here. Okay. Let's go back to your 25-year-old self. Okay. Or you're meeting a 25-year-old girl who is interested in getting into the business. What advice comes to mind that you would give either your 25-year-old self or this 25-year-old girl? If
I have one piece, and the most important piece of advice that I can give to anybody who's looking to, or a woman who's looking to start a construction company, a subcontracting company, it doesn't just have to be Masonry, is the importance of negotiating your contracts. And so many subcontractors think that they have to sign what comes across their desk from a general contractor. And that is just absolutely not the case. Your contract negotiations are going to form the basis of what your relationship is going to look like with your general contractor from that day moving forward in perpetuity. And a lot of people don't understand that they can negotiate them. Subcontractors in general tend to be, we almost finance a project. Our cash flow is dedicated towards purchasing supplies and paying for labor as the project is going up before we even get paid for it. And your ability to negotiate a contract, to negotiate payment terms or retention, as you had spoken about, and just a little brief primer on what retention is for your listeners who don't know, it's anywhere from 5 to 10% of the value of your contract that the owner holds back until the project is completed 100%. So for a contractor like me who comes in at the beginning of a project, it could be 18 months, it could be 2 years before I see final payment. And my retention generally represents our profit margin.
Right, exactly.
So it becomes a really big deal, and you can negotiate your retention releases, and so that you're getting your money sooner. You negotiate your payment terms and get 30-day terms. There's a paid when or paid if clause, things like that. So that would be my number one piece of advice is look at all your contracts and negotiate everything that comes across your desk, because a good general contractor wants you to succeed just as much as you want to succeed.
Good advice, because I was taking one of my construction clients to a factoring, a receivables financing company, and he was pretty gruff. And he said, look, retention is a gift if you get it. And I'm not financing your business that is going to make no profit until like 18 months later, if you get it. Yeah. So good feedback, good advice for people. So any last things you'd like to share before we sign off?
The pleasure has been all mine, Jonathan. This has really been a lot of fun, and I'm always here to chat with you in the future. I'd love to give you an update on how things are looking in 6 months or a year.
Fantastic. So great. Christy Crook with Phoenix Masonry. This is Jonathan Goldhill, who is the host of the Disruptive Successor podcast. If you enjoyed this show, share, subscribe, tell others, pick up a copy of my book, Disruptive Successor, a guide to driving growth in your family business. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us on the Disruptive Successor podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, review, and share with a friend who would benefit from the message. If you're interested in picking up a copy of my book, Disruptive Successor, go to disruptivesuccessor.com.